Hi, my name is Eliana, and this is the Hometown History Mix and Match assignment. I'm going to be doing this assignment on Phoenix, Arizona, which is my hometown. So, a little bit about my hometown. I grew up in West Phoenix. I was born on McDowell Road on 51st Avenue, which is West Phoenix. It's a little bit run down if you were to go there today. It's not a very nice part of town, but that's where my grandparents live. That's where they've lived forever. And we lived with them at first. And then a couple years ago, my parents decided to move to Gilbert, Arizona, which is where I currently live now. But my hometown is West Phoenix. So a little bit of the outline of this presentation. Obviously talked about my hometown, and then we're going to talk about the initial settlement of Phoenix, Arizona, the factors that contributed in development, the role of urban planning, and then the last slide is going to be my references. So we have the Phoenix kind of development timeline. Jack Swillings, which was one of the founders of Phoenix, he sees an opportunity. He stopped to rest his horse at the White Tank Mountains, and he looked across the Salt River Valley, and he saw the large potential for farmland, that was what Phoenix was at first, which was just farmland. All he saw that it needed was water. And so he had a lot of people come down, a small group of people come down, and they settled in Phoenix. At first, it didn't have a name, but after much back and forth, the name Phoenix was suggested by Daryl Dupa to pay homage to the new town, which would spring from the ruins of the former civilization, which was the Hohokam. So the growing developments in Phoenix is that Phoenix grew. And there were two main things that contributed to Phoenix large development, which Phoenix is a fairly young city, and it's come to be one of the biggest cities in America. And one of those that contributed that was the coming of the railroad, which was the first of several important events that revolutionized the economy in this area, because merchandise now flowed into the city by rail instead of wagon. And then we also have the Theodore Roosevelt Dam, which was started in 1906. It was the first multiple purpose dam supplying both water and electric power to be constructed under the National Reclamation Act. This opened a new era in farming for the valley that secured the part of the economy that depended on water for life. And because of all of those big developments and a lot of people were moving here, President William Howard Taft approved Arizona statehood as Phoenix as the capital on February 14th, 1912. And the casual, easy growth that characterized the farming community came to an end, and Phoenix began to grow into a young metropolis. At the end of the first 8 years under statehood, Phoenix was no longer a town and actually became a very important city with about a population of 30,000 residents. So next we have the factors in play in development. Now, most of the development of Phoenix became in the 1950s and 60s. Well, I should say started really in the 1950s and 60s. And there was a couple main reasons why. So first was air conditioning. Between 1950 and 1960, Phoenix saw a massive growth throughout the built environment. The city was developer friendly, automobile centric, and air conditioning could be found really in most buildings. And so in this decade, because of those factors, the population quadrupled to about 440,000 residents. And we also had a lot of people moving to Phoenix, which we're also seeing a lot of people moving to Phoenix now. But in the 1950s and 60s, we saw a lot of young adults coming to the valley and out of towners because of the favorable climate, the affordable property, and the job opportunities that were coming. However, most of the development was controlled by the Phoenix 40. So the Phoenix 40 was a small group of business people who virtually controlled the economic scene statewide. And because of their lobbying power, the city began approving skyscrapers and other development plans. So those were the biggest factors in the development. Next, we have the role of urban planning. Now, one thing that began to happen very early on was sprawl. The city began to sprawl out with the influx of single family structures, moving middle and upper class families out of the downtown area. This contributed to the former neighborhoods kind of falling into despair as commercial corridors continued to expand around them, which was often approved by those Phoenix 40. And in response to sprawl, the increased popularity of the car, traffic engineers and planners, they started to build around the car. And so they prioritized wider streets and the parking lots in front of commercial developments. Instead, it used to be behind, but now they're putting it in front because they really want to emphasize the car. All of these planning and development decisions, setting the stage for policy shifts, as well as it would set a precedent for decades to come. Phoenix streets were for cars, and walkable neighborhoods were really a thing of the past. And really, these outside developers really became king, and they were able to kind of develop like crazy, moving people kind of out of that downtown area. And one thing that Phoenix really lacked was smart growth. Um, so some of the most beautiful buildings and nice areas were being torn down and to build civic centers and massive parking garages. So the sprawl we see in the valley was not just city sanctioned, but it was essentially facilitated by various planning and development processes that were proving quite difficult to undo. So the city was sprawled. Downtown areas and living areas were starting to become like a wasteland, and public transit was criminally underutilized. However, and a lot of that came from like the Phoenix 40 and the lobbying that they did. But one of our mayors, Goddard, was urbanism minded and transit supportive, and he understood the negative effects of the private interests kind of having too much power and not really having given a lot of thought to the public. So he started to start reversing some of those, but a lot of that couldn't be undone. And so now we have the future of Phoenix and kind of Phoenix today. Today, we're seeing a huge migration back to the city and back to city centers. What the real new development is calling for is mixed use, centrally located neighborhoods that have a lot more diversity. And we're also seeing public transit as people are not wanting to be so reliable on cars. We're wanting to have, push back into public transit and kind of make it usable for everybody and not just underutilized. Yeah, and these are my references. So that's all I have today for the hometown history, and I hope you'd enjoyed it. Thank you.